All right. So have you ever thought about like starting your own business online?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Yeah, me too. And one thing that's always kind of intrigued me is this idea of like t-shirt businesses.
Yeah.
Like you see all these people selling these cool designs and you think, can I do that?
I know, right?
So we're going to do a deep dive into that today.
Awesome.
And get this, our main source is a blog post from Russia.
Wow, international.
Yeah. Talk about expanding our horizons. Right?
Definitely. What's the blog called?
It's titled KolaShi, Alibis, Hoji, Savo, Horo. Okay, so that's like creating and making money online with t-shirt prints.
Exactly.
I'm curious to see how they approach it over there.
Me too. So our mission today is to figure out a couple of things. First off, is this actually a viable business model? Like, can people really make a living selling t-shirts online?
Right, because everyone and their mom seems to have a t-shirt side hustle these days. Yeah, exactly. Second, what are the actual steps involved? Like, how do you go from a cool idea in your head to a finished product that you can sell?
And I'm guessing there's more to it than just like designing something cool and slapping it on a shirt.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And finally, can we learn from people who've actually done this successfully?
Yeah, those real-world stories are always the most inspiring.
Totally. So, to kick things off, let's talk about t-shirts themselves for a second.
Okay.
You know, they started out as this basic undergarment.
Right.
But somewhere along the line, they became this canvas for self-expression.
Yeah, like a walking billboard for whatever you're into.
Exactly. And this blog post points out that t-shirt printing actually goes all the way back to the 1950s.
Oh, wow.
It started as a way for businesses to advertise.
That makes sense.
But now it's all about personal branding and standing out from the crowd.
It's like a way to show off your personality or what you believe in.
Totally. And what I found really interesting is how this blog makes it seem like starting a t-shirt business is actually pretty doable.
Yeah, they make it sound pretty straightforward.
Right. They even talk about setting up shop right from home.
So you don't need some huge factory or anything.
Nope. They break down the essential equipment you'd need, things like printers, heat presses, special inks. It's all surprisingly achievable.
Huh. So even if I'm not like a tech whiz, I could potentially handle this.
It seems that way. Of course, there are different printing methods like direct-to-garment and heat transfer, and the blog explains those too.
Oh yeah, I've heard of those, but I'm not really sure what the difference is.
Me neither. Can you give us a quick rundown?
So direct-to-garment is kind of like the inkjet printer you might have at home, but for fabric, it basically sprays the ink right onto the shirt.
Okay, I can picture that. What about heat transfer?
Heat transfer is a bit different. You use heat to transfer a design from special paper onto the shirt.
Ah, so it's kind of like those iron-on transfers you used as a kid.
Exactly.
Interesting. So I guess direct-to-garment would allow for more intricate designs, right?
Yeah, you can get some pretty detailed and colorful prints that way.
Makes sense. And speaking of designs, the blog post also highlights some popular styles like graphic prints, slogans, pop culture references, even retro looks.
Yeah, I've definitely seen those trending lately.
And there's this one quote from the blog that really stood out to me. The design should not only be stylish, but also reflect the owner's personality.
Oh, that's a good one. But how do you strike that balance?
I know, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you create something unique that people will actually want to buy?
Exactly. And how do you even get your designs out there in front of people?
Well, that's where the marketing side of things comes in. And this blog emphasizes that just as much as the design process.
So it's not enough to just create a cool shirt. You have to know how to sell it too.
Exactly. And they highlight some interesting strategies, like using social media platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and, wait for it, VK.
VK, what's that?
It's basically the Russian version of Facebook.
Oh, wow. So they're thinking globally too. What else do they suggest?
They talk about setting up a user-friendly online store so people can easily browse and buy your designs.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And they also recommend using online marketplaces like Printio and PrintDirect. I'm not familiar with those. Are they kind of like Etsy?
Yeah, kind of. They're platforms where you can sell your designs and reach a wider audience.
Ah, so it's like having a virtual storefront in a busy online mall.
Exactly.
Smart, right?
Definitely. But I'm also curious about those success stories they mention.
Oh, yeah. They've got some really inspiring examples of people who made it big with this business model.
Like who?
Well, one that caught my eye was about a woman named Anna Petrova.
Okay.
She started this brand called Art Print.
Catchy name.
Right. And she totally nailed her social media marketing.
So she figured out how to build a following and get people excited about her designs.
Exactly. Her story shows how powerful social media can be for this kind of business.
Makes sense. What other successful people did they highlight?
Well, there was this guy named Maxim Ivanov. He really focused on producing high-quality shirts and having super fast turnaround times. So it's not just about the design, it's about the whole customer experience, too.
Exactly. It seems like quality and customer satisfaction are just as important.
It makes you wonder, is there like one right way to approach this?
Yeah. Like what works best? A strong brand presence like Anna's or operational efficiency like Maxim's?
That is the question. And speaking of questions, I'm curious about the money side of things.
Me too. Everyone wants to know if they can actually make a profit with this, right?
Right. What does the blog say about that?
But get this. They claim that online t-shirt businesses can see profit margins of 100 to 300%.
Whoa, hold on. 100 to 300%.
Oh, it sounds crazy, right?
Yeah. What are they selling? Solid gold t-shirts.
That's what I was wondering. Like, how do you even achieve those kinds of margins?
Right. Is this realistic for someone just starting out, or are we talking about like super exclusive designer brands?
That's a good point. They don't really break down how those figures are calculated.
Okay. So something to be a bit skeptical of, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. But they do mention that collaborating with influencers can be a good way to generate income.
Oh, yeah. Tapping into someone else's audience.
Exactly. And they even suggest the possibility of opening a physical store down the line.
Whoa, hold up. A real brick and mortar store.
That's what they say. But that's obviously a much bigger commitment.
Yeah, that's way down the road, if at all.
Definitely. But before we get too carried away with dreams of t-shirt empires, we have to talk about the less glamorous side of things.
Oh, yeah, the not so fun stuff.
Exactly. And this blog actually emphasizes the legal aspects.
Uh-oh, the legal stuff. What do we need to know?
Well, they talk about things like registering your business, getting the necessary licenses, and understanding intellectual property rights.
Right, so you don't accidentally steal someone else's design or get sued.
Exactly. Nobody wants to end up in legal hot water.
Definitely not. So this blog seems to cover a lot of ground.
It really does. And even though it's from Russia, there's a ton of valuable information that applies no matter where you are.
It shows you how universal this whole idea is.
Totally. And we've only just scratched the surface.
There's so much more to dive into.
I know. So in our next segment, we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of how those shirts actually get made.
Sounds good. Let's do it. You know, I was thinking about that Russian blog post and how cool it is that they actually got into the hands-on stuff.
Yeah, like actually making the shirts.
Right. It wasn't all just like business plans and marketing strategy.
Totally. They actually made it seem like something you could do yourself.
Yeah, like even if you're not some big-time fashion designer.
Exactly. And they explained those different printing methods too. Remember direct-to-garment and heat transfer?
Oh, yeah. That's right.
To be honest, I was a little fuzzy on the details.
Well, remember we were comparing direct-to-garment to like an inkjet printer?
Yeah.
It's basically like that. It sprays the ink right onto the fabric.
Okay.
And it's really good for those detailed designs, you know, like photorealistic stuff.
Okay, that's starting to come back to me. What about heat transfer? That sounded more like what I used to do as a kid with those iron-on things.
You got it. It's very similar to that. You print the design on this special paper first.
Okay.
And then you use a heat press to transfer it onto the shirt.
So it's like melting the design onto the fabric.
Pretty much. It's a good option if you're just starting out or if you're doing like smaller batches.
So if I'm like experimenting with different designs, maybe heat transfer is the way to go.
It could be. And it's good for things that aren't t-shirts too, you know, like hats or bags.
Oh, right, because you can't really lay those flat in a printer.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's say I'm ready to set up my own little t-shirt operation.
Okay.
What kind of equipment are we talking about here?
Well, first off, you're going to need a special printer.
Okay.
Not just your regular old office printer, though.
So I can't just use the one that's been sitting in my basement for 5 years.
Probably not the best idea. You'll need one specifically designed for printing on fabric.
Got it. And what else?
You'll also need a heat press.
A heat press.
Yeah. That's how you bond the ink to the fabric.
So that's what gives it that professional look and makes sure it doesn't wash off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, and of course you'll need the inks too.
Right. Special inks for fabric.
Yep. There's actually a whole science to choosing the right kind of ink.
Really?
Yeah. But that's a whole other deep dive, maybe for another day.
Yeah, maybe. So what about the workspace itself? Can I really do this from home, or do I need like a dedicated studio?
The blog actually suggests you can start from home.
Really?
Yeah. It's best to have a dedicated space, though, you know, with good ventilation.
Oh, right, because of the fumes.
Exactly.
That's quite
Especially
fun.
if you're using those solvent-based inks for heat transfer.
Okay, so maybe not in my tiny little closet then?
Probably not. You'll also want a sturdy table, Good lighting, a comfortable chair, the basics.
Makes sense. And the blog talked a lot about safety, too. What are some of the things we need to be careful about?
Well, with the heat press, you're dealing with high temperatures, so you got to be super careful.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Always follow the manufacturer's instructions and never leave it unattended.
Okay. Good advice. What about the inks?
Always wear gloves and eye protection when you're handling those, and make sure you have good ventilation.
So gloves, goggles, ventilation. Check. It's starting to sound a bit like a chemistry lab in here.
It's better to be safe than sorry. Oh, and a fire extinguisher is a good idea too, just in case.
Good point. Noted. All right. So let's say I've got all my gear, my designs, my safety stuff all ready to go. Walk me through the actual process of making a shirt.
Okay. So the first thing you need to do is prepare your design for printing.
Okay.
That usually means creating a digital file that your printer can read.
So if I'm not a graphic designer, I might need to outsource that part.
You could, or you could learn some basic design software. There are a lot of user-friendly programs out there these days.
So even if I'm not a Photoshop wizard, I can still give it a shot.
Definitely. Once you have your design file ready, the next steps depend on whether you're doing direct-to-garment or heat transfer.
Okay, let's break those down one at a time.
All right, so for direct-to-garment, you basically load the t-shirt onto the printer.
Like a piece of paper.
Yep. Select your design file, hit print, and the printer sprays the ink right onto the fabric.
So it really is like printing a document just on fabric.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then you use the heat press to cure the ink and make it permanent.
Got it. What about heat transfer?
For heat transfer, you first print your design onto that special transfer paper.
Okay.
Then you carefully position the paper on the t-shirt and use the heat press to transfer the design.
I bet that positioning part is tricky.
It can be, but it gets easier with practice.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh, and speaking of the shirts themselves, are there certain types that work better for printing?
That's a good question.
Like I've noticed that some t-shirts feel different,
Yeah. The fabric definitely matters. Natural fibers like cotton are usually best.
So your classic cotton tee is a good starting point.
Exactly. Cotton absorbs ink well, and it makes for a nice, durable print.
What about those synthetic fabrics like polyester?
Those can be a bit trickier. You might need special inks, or you might need to pre-treat the fabric.
Okay, so maybe stick with cotton for now.
It's probably a good idea. Oh, and speaking of pre-treating, what is that anyway?
Yeah, I've heard that term, but I'm not really sure what it means.
It's basically a way to help the ink bond better with the fabric, especially if you're printing on dark colors or synthetic materials.
So it's kind of like priming a wall before you paint it.
Exactly. It creates a better surface for the ink to grip.
Makes sense. So you wouldn't want to skip that step if you want your design to last.
Definitely not. But beyond just the technical stuff, it's also worth thinking about the environmental impact of all this.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Is t-shirt printing eco-friendly?
It can be. There are definitely ways to make it more sustainable.
Like what?
Well, for starters, you can choose eco-friendly inks.
Yeah.
Ones that are biodegradable and free of harsh chemicals.
That's good for the planet and probably good for the people wearing the shirts, too.
Exactly. And you can also choose eco-friendly t-shirts.
Oh, like organic cotton or something.
Yeah. Or even recycled materials. There are some companies making shirts out of recycled plastic bottles.
Wow, that's amazing. Turning trash into fashion.
I know, right? So cool. And then just thinking about minimizing waste in general. Using your inks and materials efficiently.
Right. So recycling whenever possible and all that good stuff.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So, we've talked a lot about the actual making of the shirts, but a lot of people start this as like a side hustle, right?
Yeah.
So what if you want to turn it into a real business?
Yeah. What are some things to consider?
Well, first of all, you need a plan.
Okay, so like a business plan.
Exactly. It should outline your goals, your target audience, your marketing strategy, your financial projections, all that stuff.
So like, who are you selling to? How are you going to reach them? How are you going to make money?
Exactly. It forces you to think through all the different aspects of your business.
Makes sense. And speaking of reaching your audience, that Russian blog really emphasized knowing your target market.
Oh, yeah, that's so important. Right, like you're not going to design the same shirt for a group of metalheads as you would for like a book club.
Exactly. You need to understand their interests, their style, their sense of humor, even where they hang out online.
So do some serious market research before you even print your first shirt.
It's definitely a good idea. It'll inform your designs, your marketing, even your pricing.
Got it. Okay, so we've got our business plan. We know who we're selling to. Now, how do we actually start selling those shirts? What are our options?
Well, you could create your own online store.
Okay.
That gives you a lot of control over your brand and the whole customer experience.
And I'm guessing there are websites that help you set that up.
Oh, yeah, tons. Platforms like Shopify and Squarespace make it pretty easy.
Cool. So no coding degree required.
Nope. Or you could go the online marketplace route, places like Etsy or Amazon Handmade.
Yeah, I've seen those.
They're a good way to reach a bigger audience, but you do have to pay fees and you have less control over your brand.
So it's like the difference between having your own boutique versus renting a space in a department store.
Exactly. And don't forget about selling in person, too.
Oh, right.
Like at local markets, craft fairs, pop-up shops.
Yeah, I like that idea. It's more personal. You get to meet your customers face to face.
It is. But no matter how you choose to sell your shirts, marketing is key.
So how do we do that? What are some good marketing strategies?
Well, social media is a big one, obviously.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier.
You can share photos of your designs, connect with influencers, even run ads.
It's all about building a community, right?
Yeah. Like responding to comments, running contests, showing that there's a real person behind the brand.
Totally. Email marketing is still a thing too, right?
Oh, yeah. You can keep people updated on new designs, offer special deals, things like that.
And never underestimate the power of word of mouth.
True. Happy customers are your best advertisement.
Okay, so we've got our designs, our production process, our marketing plan. Now, what about pricing? How do we figure out what to charge for our amazing creations?
Pricing. That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
It's all about finding that sweet spot,
Okay.
You need to cover your costs, of course.
So the cost of the shirts, the ink, your time, all that.
Right. Plus any overhead you might have, like equipment or studio rent.
And then you have to add a markup to make a profit.
Exactly. But how much of a markup? That's the tricky part.
Yeah, is there like a magic formula or something?
I wish. It really depends on your target market, your competition, the perceived value of your brand.
So like a super high-end designer t-shirt is going to cost more than a basic everyday tee.
Right. Do your research, see what your competitors are charging, and try to find a price point that makes sense for you and your customer.
Okay, that makes sense. It's all about finding that balance between making a profit and giving people a good value.
Exactly. It's kind of amazing how much we've covered just from that one Russian blog post.
It really is. It shows you that inspiration can come from anywhere.
Totally. And it just goes to show how global this whole t-shirt thing really is.
Like a worldwide community.
It is. But before we get too carried away, we need to remember that none of this is possible without one key ingredient.
Oh, and what's that?
Creativity.
Ah, yes, the most important ingredient of all.
You gotta have those unique designs, those cool ideas, those captivating stories.
Right. It's easy to get caught up in all the technical and business stuff.
But at the end of the day, it's all about expressing yourself and sharing your vision with the world.
And that's what makes this so exciting.
Exactly. And that's what we'll be talking about in our next segment. We're going to delve into those inspiring success stories and see what we can learn from people who've turned their t-shirt dreams into reality.
It's crazy how this t-shirt thing really ties into like everything that's going on with online businesses these days.
Oh, totally.
It's like a perfect example of the whole personalization trend.
Yeah. People want things that are unique.
Exactly. And handcrafted stuff is huge right now.
Yeah. And let's not forget the power of social media.
Oh, yeah. That's a game changer.
And even sustainability. People care about where their clothes come from.
It's all about making conscious choices.
Totally.
And it's all happening right here in the t-shirt world.
It's pretty cool.
It is. And it makes me think about those success stories from the blog. Like, remember Anna Petrova?
Oh, yeah, the art print lady.
Yeah. She built this whole brand on social media.
She was a marketing whiz.
I know. And it really shows how important it is to connect with people. Not just try to sell them something.
Yeah, she made people feel like they were part of something.
Exactly. And it goes back to the idea that every t-shirt can tell a story.
It's like a walking advertisement for whatever you're into.
Yeah, or a way to express your personality.
Totally. And with all the different printing techniques and design possibilities we talked about, the possibilities are endless.
I know. So for anyone listening who might be feeling inspired but also a little intimidated, what advice would you give them based on what we've learned?
Good question. I think the biggest thing is to just embrace your creativity.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to experiment.
Exactly. Try new things, let your personality shine through.
And don't be afraid to get niche right.
Oh, yeah. You don't have to appeal to everyone.
Find your people.
Exactly. And remember, there are so many resources out there to help you get started.
Yeah. There are platforms that handle the printing and shipping so you can focus on the creative side.
And there are online communities where you can connect with other t-shirt entrepreneurs.
I know. It's amazing how accessible this all is.
It really is.
And to think this whole conversation started with a blog post from Russia.
It just goes to show that inspiration can come from anywhere.
Totally. And we hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought.
Yeah, maybe even sparked a new business idea.
Who knows? Maybe someday we'll be featuring your success story on the deep dive.
That would be awesome.
So to everyone listening, thanks for joining us.
Keep creating.
Keep exploring.
And keep diving deep.
We'll see you next time.